Hi guys, and welcome back to Version of Events News Roundup. In News Roundup we dip, and in our other cases we deep dive. So here we've got a few cases today. It's going to be quite a packed episode that we're looking forward to bringing to you.
Yeah, that's right. Really excited to bring this to you guys. And we've got our new segment as well coming up today. Should we talk about that a bit, Ellie?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So our new segment is Missing and Marginalised. It was Jess's idea, so kudos, Jess. Kudos, Jess.
Thank you.
And the aim of it is to bring awareness to cases that aren't getting the press's attention as much. So, not like the Gabby Petitos of the world. Those that are vulnerable, at risk, who go missing, and often the investigations into their disappearances aren't great. We're just here to try and raise a little bit more awareness.
Yeah, perfectly said. Looking forward to bringing that to you guys.
Right, so we're gonna kick it off today with Lori Daybell.
Yeah, that's right. Doomsday Cult Mom is back in the news again. It's only been a couple of weeks since we talked about Lori Vallow Daybell. She was convicted recently of conspiracy to murder her husband, Charles Vallow. But already since then, we said we'd bring an update, and since then, Looney Lori has filed a motion for a new trial. So in this 13-page motion, Lori, acting as her own attorney, asked for a new trial on 5 grounds. Those are 1, juror misconduct, 2, preclusion of statements from Tylee Ryan and Alex Cox, and the impermissible expert testimony by Chandler Police Department Detective Daniel Coons, 3, a discovery violation, 4, prosecutorial misconduct, and 5, the court's lack of impartiality.
Well, that's an interesting one to end with.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. So we'll go through them now for you, and I suppose talk about what we think are the strengths, if any, and the weaknesses of these claims. So first up, there's the juror misconduct claim, and specifically what Lori Vallow's alleging is that Juror 15 made a statement to the media which indicated he had knowledge of her prior convictions. Those convictions, for those who need a refresher, are the murders of her own children, Tylee and JJ, and the murder of her now husband's then wife, Tammy Daybell.
I mean, wow.
Yeah, so you could understand why she would prefer the jurors not know about that. And that was the decision of the court, that those evidence about those crimes would not be admitted in the trial. And the jurors were admonished not to look into the case. So, specifically, shortly after the guilty verdict was announced, this juror was asked about his reaction when he learned about Lori's convictions. And he said, I feel sorry for her. Driving home yesterday, I was like, God, she's spending the next 3 lives in prison, in a cell. And the problem with that is the day before he gave this interview, which would have been yesterday, the jury hadn't returned a verdict, so he wasn't supposed to know about the prior convictions. It's a shame, yeah, and perhaps the media shouldn't be shoving microphones in jurors' faces as they walk out of the trial. It would be traumatic, I think. And then to learn that she killed her kids. So the juror also said that he had been undecided and on the fence until the deliberations began. Now, in the motion, Lori describes this as leaning towards a not guilty vote up until yesterday and through deliberations, and says Juror 15 noted that up until the day of closing arguments, he would have voted not guilty. And that's not quite accurate to what he said. Obviously, if he's unsure and if he remains unsure, then his vote would be for not guilty. But he didn't say that he was planning to vote not guilty. It was clearly that he hadn't made up his mind. And we'll play that clip for you now, just so you can hear exactly what was said, rather than just take it from Lori or take it from us.
After when you went into deliberation, were you still unsure?
Well, I was unsure up until yesterday, really. And then through deliberation, I mean, that's the whole purpose of it is, to bring out the evidence and talk about every facet of it that we can understand. So, yeah, that's yesterday I was still on the fence.
Yeah. Was it just maybe the magnitude of how big this decision was, or maybe the lack of evidence, the missing pieces? What was it?
For me, it was, where is the proof of conspiracy? I mean, the bullet's over there, the bat's over there, there's a hole there, none of that has anything to do with conspiracy. It has everything to do with Alex Jotty. All right. So my big thing was, if you're going to say something, how does that go along with the conspiracy to commit murder? That was my big thing. And like I said, it was the text that threw me.
Was there a specific text message?
There were two specific ones, but I'm not sure I should talk about the.
Yeah. And because we've seen, a lot of this evidence too. Does that make that any different for you? Or
can you tell me what evidence you saw on the text messages? There was one that had something to do with insurance. That was one of them. And the other one was basically the Nephi thing. So.
Now that you know that so many people that were talked about in this case are dead, did you know that originally, or that's?
I had never heard of Lori Daybell before I got picked for this jury. Because I watch Fox News, but I don't watch Fox News 10. Watch Fox News because I like the different shows that are on here, but I don't watch NBC or CBS or anything like that. So I didn't know her. No, I had no idea of any.
Now, when you're realizing the magnitude of this case, what's kind of
those kids use?
That's all I can say. Just
Yeah. Do you remember your reaction knowing that she has been Biba Day killing her two children?
I feel sorry for her, I mean, driving home yesterday, I was like, God, she's spending the next 3 lives in prison in a cell. I mean, you got to feel sorry for her, even though, I mean, that's off thing to do. I mean, there's something wrong up here, but he's still, you just feel awful about it. But
and you said it was the text messages that really changed it for you. You were confident in that decision going forward.
Absolutely confident. Once we talked about those particular text messages, absolutely confident, 100%.
So you said it was the text message about the insurance, and then the one where she said that his soul is pretty dead or something along those lines.
Well, no, it was the kind of like everything's coming to a head. Soon you'll be Nephi and so will I. That was one of the texts. And then the other one was he changed the beneficiary basically before we got to him, before we had him gone. So that was the other.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
So yeah, that was what was said. So as you can see, he didn't actually say he was intending to vote not guilty, but he did clearly say he knew about the verdicts, the previous convictions yesterday.
I mean, that's got to be enough on its own to grant her a new trial, I think.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do, because they were admonished not to look up Lori and her previous convictions. They went out of their way to pick a jury that didn't know about Lori and her convictions. And he lied to the court. He knew more than he let on. And I think that in of itself is probably enough to get her a new trial. I don't think she actually needs the rest. I think the rest is just filler. But yeah, I do think so. Hi guys, this is Editing Ellie popping in to say that I may have changed my mind a little bit on whether I think the jury issue might get Lori a new trial. Having listened fully to the clip, it seems like he just misspoke. But let us know what you think on our social media. Okay, back to us.
That's interesting. I do certainly agree it's the strongest claim in this motion by far. He shouldn't have known about the convictions, and it seems like he did. It's possible, I suppose, that he misspoke, but I think he perhaps learned during deliberations from another juror. We'll find out.
Yeah. And if that means that more than one juror knew, that's even worse.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, the fact that he said he was undecided and during deliberations was convinced, Laurie's very clearly suggesting that what actually convinced him wasn't any of the admissible evidence, it was her previous convictions.
Yeah, it's a fair argument.
It is. And so reading the motion, the remedy Laurie asks for is a new trial. But that's all that she suggests. She doesn't. So one of the ways you can tell that she's not a lawyer, often in a legal argument, the lawyer will say, for example, in this case, it would be, we're asking the court for a new trial, but if the court doesn't feel that a new trial is needed, we'd ask the court to hold a hearing and speak to the jurors to ascertain whether there was jury misconduct. Essentially, you ask for what you want, but suggest the lesser remedy in case you're not granted it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think the court still could proceed with talking to the jury, and I think that would be if they were going to proceed possibly to a new trial. I think that would have to happen first.
Yeah, I agree.
It is a mistake by Lori not to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. They definitely would have to pull the jury back in and investigate the situation.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, however, if everyone denies knowing, then and the juror explains his comment,
well, yeah,
I think it might look quite different after that.
It could.
But we'll see what the prosecution response is as well.
It could look quite different after that. And who are they going to believe? A convicted murderer or an honest juror?
Just a juror, yeah. So yeah, Lori starts from the strongest argument by far, and she moves on to talking about the preclusion of statements. She says, by precluding Tylee Ryan, that's her child that she murdered, by the way. By precluding Tylee Ryan and Alex Cox's statements, this defendant was prevented from presenting part of her defence at trial, and thus she did not receive a fair and impartial trial. Now, bluntly, she actually makes no legal argument in this section as to why these statements should have been admissible. They're hearsay, they're an out-of-court statement offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So that shows really, that keeps them out. And Lori doesn't make any argument as to why she thinks they're not hearsay. She doesn't refer to any case law, she just refers to the Arizona rules of criminal procedure.
I think it's interesting that she wants Tylee's statement in. And the reason I think that that's interesting is because they're then going to ask, well, why isn't Tylee being called as a witness?
Well, yeah, it's
And it opens up questions about what's going on.
Yeah, where's Tylee?
Yeah. And I wouldn't have thought she wanted those questions being asked by jurors.
You'd very much think not. So yeah, I think it will be straightforward enough to dismiss this claim. And the same really goes for the impermissible expert testimony. I think that was on the grounds that he had based his testimony on something Alex had said, but it's very thin, really. The alleged discovery violation is that during trial, the prosecutor produced a hard drive containing the grey key information for Charles Vallow's cell phone. The contents of the hard drive are exculpatory evidence. Defence had been requesting this evidence. So again, in this section, there's no case law cited at all. And possibly worse, there's no explanation offered for why the contents are supposedly exculpatory.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just say it's exculpatory, Your Honour, and oh well then. You have to actually you have to explain why it's exculpatory, and generally speaking, prove a Brady violation, it's discovery violation. You'd have to prove that the evidence was so exculpatory, there's a good chance it would have changed the verdict.
Yeah.
Ongoing discovery is allowed during trial, and I'm not a lawyer, so don't say this is gospel. It is allowed during trial, particularly if the new evidence has been received during trial or very recently. So that could be what occurred here. So, right, to be as charitable as possible, this claim could succeed if it turned out the contents were particularly exculpatory and the state had delayed handing them over significantly.
I suppose the question is, though, is even if they were that exculpatory, the way that she's gone about asking for it and appealing it might mean that a judge turns it down anyway because she's not included why she's not made her argument. She's just said that's exculpatory, Your Honour.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the argument's really weak because she doesn't explain those things. And I suspect that the reason she hasn't explained why this evidence is exculpatory is because it's not. But we'll see, I suppose. Or we may not see. Right, the next phase, the prosecutorial misconduct claim is that the state elicited irrelevant, prejudicial and improper character evidence when she asked Chandler Fire Captain Keller if he had overheard any conversations with this defendant. The prosecutor asked Captain Keller on direct examination, "Did you overhear this defendant talking with police?" She's also accused the prosecutor, Trina Kay, of giving false statements by saying Alex had no reason to be at this defendant's home and that this defendant told Alex to bring a gun, and commented several times on the defendant's demeanour during this incident, the drive to the police station on the body camera, and told the jury you did not see her cry in that interview, knowing there are portions of the interview that had been cut from the following interview admitted by the state, where she, that is Lori, sat in the room, did show emotion, and can be seen grabbing a Kleenex. End quote. That was a long one. So again, despite the length of Lori's complaint here, she's referenced no case law, only the Arizona rules of criminal procedure. I mean, frankly, in terms of the improper character evidence, Fire Captain Keller was asked if he'd overheard anything said by Lori. This is something that Lori said, so it's an exception to the hearsay rule. And Lori said something like not being invited to a pool party. It's a reflection, quite a minor reflection in the context of the trial, on her mental state following her husband being shot. It's definitely not more prejudicial than probative, which is the standard for admitting such kind of character evidence. And also, Lori didn't object to this at the time. There was no objection from her. So the bar, if you don't object to something, the bar to challenge it successfully after that is much higher. The judge could legitimately say that she had waived the issue by not objecting.
Mm-hmm.
And the same is true of the issues with the closing argument. Lori didn't object, so it's likely waived. But also, all of those things that prosecutor Trina Kay said in closing argument are legitimate argument. Said that you couldn't see any tears. That's legitimate. She said that Alex had no reason to be at the defendant's home and that Lori told Alex to bring a gun. That's argument. And if she had an objection, she could have objected to it.
I was going to say that was her argument. That was what the prosecution, that was their story. That is what they are saying happened. So, yeah, like you say,
Absolutely.
if you don't object, then tough luck.
It's yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's how the judge will see it. But it's interesting that Lori's big complaint here is about the interview, her crying in the interview, because she made a point repeatedly in her closing, asking the jurors to watch the whole of the video, watch it all, not just the parts the state had played during the trial. And there was an interview with a different juror, who said that they did watch it, and it didn't really. She didn't understand why Lori wanted them to watch it, and that it wasn't helpful to her case. So I think possibly Lori's misjudged how she comes across in that video.
I think it's interesting that she points to herself as well. You didn't show me crying. You didn't show me picking up the Kleenex. Me.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah. Me.
That's Lori.
That's that, yeah. So, finally, so we said this was an interesting one. She alleges a lack of impartiality on the part of the court, by the judge. She says the judge is biased against her. And she gives a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, he struck some of her witnesses because they had no relevance, and because he asked her to establish on the record what relevancy her witnesses would present, which Lori says required her to state in front of the prosecutor her defence strategy. Lori says this required her to state in front of the prosecution her defence strategy. She also objects to the judge commenting when overruling a prosecution objection to her line of questioning. This was about whether the concept of the translation, becoming a higher being, is common in Mormonism. She referred to biblical figures in the Book of Mormon. The prosecution objected, and the judge said, "I'll allow it to the extent that you're comparing yourself to these biblical figures." And Lori says this shows bias. I mean, I thought that comment about the biblical figures was quite funny, to be honest, but I suppose the judge's job isn't to be funny.
Yeah, he's definitely not there for a stand-up routine. Though, that said, it was quite funny. And ultimately, it's what she was doing.
It's exactly what she was doing. It certainly doesn't go to bias, I don't think. So again, in this section, only one piece of case law is presented, and there's no real argument made about the witnesses who were struck. I mean, one of them was reporter Nate Eaton, who I think it was self-evident that he had no evidence to contribute. He was not relevant. Lori just didn't want him in the gallery. She wanted him excluded because he's a witness, so he couldn't report on the trial. So I think it's completely reasonable that they were struck.
Yeah.
In terms of having to establish how witnesses had information that's relevant, that's not unusual. That's not something that's... Of course, the prosecutor's there because it has to be done in court. And if the judge isn't convinced that your witness is relevant, the judge is going to question you on that. What you can do is make an offer of proof, which is where your witness would testify outside the presence of the jury, and the judge decides through that whether it's relevant or not. And I'm pretty confident, in fact I'm very confident, that Lori didn't ask to make any offers of proof.
Well, again, it's the fact she didn't challenge it. She never challenges anything, she just lets it happen. And this is the problem with defending yourself against a murder charge. It's not petty theft, it's not something relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. It's a murder charge.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same. It's not objecting and trying to relitigate it afterwards. You've missed it, Lori, because you're not a lawyer.
Yeah, and the whole point of the trial was for you to litigate it then.
That's right. So overall, my take is that this motion's unlikely to succeed. But if anything's done on any of these grounds, it is most likely to be on the alleged juror misconduct. if that can be proven and the extent of it kind of comes out in court, if it's significant, then that could potentially succeed. But of course, we haven't seen the prosecution's response, and I think we can expect one before the judge rules.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Gosh.
I mean,
Lori.
I truly hope that this turns out the juror misspoke and this can be dismissed, because having to go through another trial would be horrible for the families of the victim. I mean,
I agree.
The families of the other victims too. So let's hope that that's how that kind of works itself out. Right. Well, that's a little update on Lori Daybell for you, Lori Vallow Daybell. But Ellie, we've got another case. The next case we're looking at is Madeleine McCann.
We are looking at Madeleine McCann. There have been a few flickers in the news world about the Madeleine McCann case. It has been revealed that the German police have a hard drive which was found at Christian Brueckner's abandoned home that contains evidence that strongly implies that Madeleine McCann is dead. The material has been described as deeply concerning and suggests that Brueckner's obsession with young children was truly dangerous and disturbing. Other items found at Mr. Brueckner's home include children's clothes, toys, masks, chemicals, and guns.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean...
That's very, very worrying, isn't it?
Yeah, he's prolific. He's a prolific offender. So it is said that the hard drive contains highly disturbing images, which German police investigators have yet to fully disclosed, but they are believed to hold crucial evidence that Madeleine is dead. And so they are maintaining that they have physical evidence, but no forensic evidence of Madeleine's death. And they are reluctant to charge Brueckner without the forensics because they believe they will be necessary in securing a conviction for Maddie and her family. So basically the way it works in Germany is they place a lot of weight on the forensics. I know we do most places, but I think particularly so in Germany. And that's why, although they've got this evidence that they believe shows Madeleine dead, they're still not willing to move forward with charges. They want to get it right, basically. They know they've got one shot at getting this guy, and they don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, that's very understandable. So I guess they've got physical but not forensic. So they've got something which they've not yet or not been able to pull forensics like DNA or something from, I guess?
I'm guessing the physical evidence is the hard drive and the photos.
Oh, gosh.
I'm not sure that they've got anything that they could pull DNA off of. It's not totally clear. They've kind of kept it shrouded for now, which I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Maddie, she was just 3 years old when she vanished from a holiday apartment complex in Praia de Luz, Portugal in 2007. And that prompted a Europe-wide investigation. But the case went cold very quickly. And the discovery of new evidence made in 2016 was discovered by luck when a dog led police to a suspected grave on Brueckner's property. The grave turned out to be that of a dead dog, but below the dead animal, they uncovered a wallet containing 6 USB sticks and 2 memory cards, all of which were full of disturbing material.
Wow, that's some hiding place underneath a dead dog. That's...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm guessing he thought they'll see it's a dog and not bother to look any further. But...
Thank goodness they found them.
Yeah. Yeah. As a result, 100 police officers began a full search of Brueckner's home, which sounds like a lot, but his home was an abandoned factory in central Germany. And that turned up Brueckner's writing, which details his obsession with abducting children. One story detailed drugging a mother and daughter outside a preschool, while another is all about the abuse of a 4-year-old blonde girl. The police also found records of Skype chats with other paedophiles, and in one chat, Brueckner says he wanted to, quote, capture something small and use it for days, end quote.
That is horrifying.
It's beyond the pale for me. I cannot even imagine how sick you have to be to say something like that.
Absolutely horrifying.
But it's these child abuse images that are said to have linked him to the search for Maddie. Police found a case with pictures of girls aged 4 and 5. So she was in the age range that he was interested in. Makes me feel sick saying that.
Yeah.
There were also more than 75 children's swimming costumes, as well as toys and small bikes.
Wow.
So, yeah. I don't know whether they were from victims or whether he purchases them because he's sick. Who knows? But shockingly, last year, Brueckner was cleared of abuse charges against 5 women and children, which was seen as a significant setback for the investigators in Maddie's case. But, having said that, prosecutors in Germany have said that they are convinced that Brueckner, a prolific criminal with a record of rape and sexual abuse, took 3-year-old Maddie from her parents' rented holiday apartment in 2007. However, no charges have been brought against him, as I mentioned earlier. It's actually a selfie that linked Brueckner to the RAD Dam, which is about 35 miles from Praia de Luz. So he was clearly in the area and close enough to commit the crime.
Yeah, he's definitely a very good suspect. He's in the area with these kind of behaviours. So.
Yeah, definitely. But there are many new findings after an investigation by The Sun, a British sorry excuse for a tabloid paper, which is being aired on Channel 4 at 9 p.m. tonight on Wednesday the 7th, so it'll already be out by the time this episode is dropped. I'll be catching up with it for sure, so it might be worth cracking out those VPNs to use Channel 4 streaming service if you live outside of the UK and you want to watch it.
Yeah, never by The Sun, but I'll watch this for sure.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to watch and see what they've come up with, what else links him to Maddie specifically.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's my opinion from what they've said, they've got to have images of Maddie.
That's how it sounds, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely heartbreaking.
Hopefully they were able to move forward with the charge against him.
Yes,
soon.
Fingers crossed on that. But I'll watch the documentary and update you all for those who aren't going to be able to watch it. So we'll see how it goes. Right, so it is time for Missing and Marginalised.
Jax Gratton, 34, is missing from Denver, Colorado. She's a hairstylist and she's a transgender woman. She was last seen just before 10 p.m. on April the 15th, leaving her apartment in the 4200 block of East Iliff Avenue. She left without her makeup or her medication, and she left her beloved cat behind. Jax is around 150 pounds. She's quite skinny. She's 5 foot 11 inches tall. She has blue eyes, and she's got pink hair, which is sort of fading to a blonde or brown colour. We want to emphasise that her height is 5'11". The police report states 5'8". That's incorrect. Jax was last seen wearing a dark striped t-shirt, a jacket, some trousers which looked quite loose-fitting with a dark pattern on them. She had her hair tied back in a ponytail and she was carrying 2 handbags. She has a number of tattoos, and as she changes her hair quite frequently, these might be helpful because they'll stay the same. So on her left forearm, she has a number of intersecting black lines. Some of the squares which are formed where the lines cross over are coloured in yellow. On her right upper arm, she has the outline of a woman next to something kind of an animal print pattern. On her right wrist, she has a flower. On her upper chest, there are 3 Italian words. The middle one, which is most visible, says Fratello, and there's 4 stars. There's writing on the back of one of her legs, which reads, "What destroys me nourishes me, and what nourishes me destroys me." She has a scar on the back of her upper neck, and below that, there's a tattoo of a plug socket. We spoke to Jax's mum, Sherry Lynn, who is lovely and is finding this very difficult, but she's very active. She shared that Jax is in recovery from substance abuse and she's attending regular AA meetings and similar 12-step meetings. And she showed us a post that Jax had made celebrating a year of sobriety. Sherry Lynn highlighted that Jax ended the post by saying, "I deserve a life of freedom filled with love and growth," and she said that Jax does deserve that. If you're in or near Denver in particular, please keep an eye out for Jax, and anyone can join the Facebook group Find Jax Gratton Denver. And if you have any information or if you've seen Jax, please call the police tip line on 720-913-2000. That's 720-913-2000. And Ellie's going to tell us about Brett Charles Williams.
Yeah, I am indeed. Brett Charles Williams is 23 and has been missing from Islington in London since January 2025. He was last seen leaving a police station. He sometimes goes by his middle name, Charles. He's a trans man, around 5 foot tall, with brown eyes and brown hair. He's got a large build. He has a number of tattoos, a large moth across his neck, a skull in roses on his hand, and 2 X's on his forehead. He has numerous facial piercings on his mouth, nose, and one in his eyebrow. He has a bridge piercing on his nose and likes to wear dark goth/emo style clothing. He has a lot of connections in the goth community. He is from Upton-on-Severn in Worcestershire, England, and also has links to Birmingham. He sometimes walks using a mobility aid. If you see Brett or you have any information, please call the police on 01905 331 099. That's 01905 331 099.
Thank you guys for listening to Missing and Marginalised.
And yeah, we're going to move on with the episode now into Sam Gould.
Yeah, we are. So, Sam Gould is a former Labour city councillor in Redbridge in London. He was arrested on March the 8th this year and charged with 2 counts of indecent exposure. He pleaded guilty and he was sentenced on April 28th to 22 weeks in prison, which is suspended for 2 years. And what the suspended means is that if he gets in any trouble in the next 2 years, he'll have to serve that 22 weeks in prison. If he doesn't, then he won't serve that time. So, the offence is what he did. On February the 9th, Gould was masturbating in his car in public while he was parked up on Patricia Drive in Hornchurch. I put the picture in our notes. if for Ellie to see, because you can see how close he is to that park right there.
Oh, God, yeah. He's right on top of it, practically.
Exactly. And if you look in the corner of that park, there is a children's
Yeah.
playground. If you want to check how close it is, guys, you can look it up. That's Patricia Drive in Hornchurch, which is London. So the same day, he drove past a female dog walker. Then he parked his car around the corner in front of her with his windows open and masturbated in full view of her. Feeling, in her words, distressed and violated, the victim took down Gould's number plate and reported the incident to the police. A month later, on March the 8th, on Haino Road in Rumford, Gould again parked his car, and on this occasion he masturbated as a 13-year-old girl walked past on her way to meet some friends. A 13-year-old girl.
Jesus.
He then followed her in his car, still masturbating, and he scared her so much she hid behind a bush. She then ran into a block of flats to seek help, but nobody came to her aid. That's really sad.
Oh my God. That's terrifying.
Yeah. As the victim left the block of flats, she saw Sam Gould following her on foot out of his car, and she ran back towards her home while calling for her mother.
That's just outrageous behaviour.
It's horrifying. So this brave girl reported the incident to the police, and he was arrested. The police then linked him to the previous incident. He pleaded guilty to both counts on March the 9th, and a few days later, he resigned as a councillor. He was also sacked as a personal aide to the government's health secretary, Wes Streeting MP. So this is a guy he's previously stood for Parliament. He'd likely had a future career in politics. So this is not some kind of no one, you know?
Yeah, it's somebody that's going somewhere, as it were.
So Gould was bailed after his initial plea before sentencing so that probation could complete a pre-sentencing report. And he was sentenced on April the 28th to that 22 weeks in prison suspended. Interestingly, the judge who did the sentencing, Paul Donegan, initially refused to proceed with sentencing him because he said that Gould had refused in his pre-sentence interview to fully accept his crimes. And the judge said, quote, "It's a denial. This offence requires an intention, and he denies that intention. He says he just happens to be there and they just happen to pass." So what the judge means is for indecent exposure to be a crime, it has to be intended to cause distress. That's the mens rea, the thinking aspect of the crime. And Sam Gould, apparently in his pre-sentence interview, was still trying to claim that he just happened to be masturbating in his car. And that's not what happened.
But apart from anything else, why on earth do you think that masturbating in the car is a good idea? What do you think's going to happen? You're going to get seen.
Well, yeah. So after leaving court to discuss the issues the judge had raised, Gould came back in with his lawyer, and the lawyer announced that he accepted the prosecution case and said Gould accepted his behaviour had been unlawful and reprehensible. In defence and mitigation of Gould, the lawyer said that on the day of the offence against the 13-year-old girl, so that's the day this guy followed, masturbated at, and then got out of his car and pursued on foot, he had attended a difficult meeting, and that's why he decided to masturbate briefly, apparently, in his car. When he realised he'd been seen, his lawyer said, he was in a very, very panicked state. And apparently he got out of his car because he was looking to talk to her, so he's following her at that point. He was in a state of absolute panic. I mean, as excuses go, I was masturbating in my car, a 13-year-old girl saw me, and I had no choice but to get out and follow her. That is a novel defence.
That's, yeah. It's a choice,
It's a
that's
choice.
for sure.
Yeah. Lori does concede, though, that it was entirely understandable she was in such a state of fear. He apologises profusely. Well, he said sorry. I guess that must be all right then.
Mm.
So
It's just gross.
so gross. So there are plenty of things to question here. The first thing, this jumped out at me. Why didn't the police pick him up after the incident in February? And the woman was reported what happened. She got his number plate. The police could have invited him in for a voluntary interview. And what a voluntary interview means in practice is either they go into the interview or they get arrested. They had enough to do that, or just to arrest him. That wasn't done. A month later, and the behaviour's already escalated. It's escalated, targeting a teenage girl, and then getting out of his car, and bluntly getting out of his car and chasing her.
Yeah, that's a worrying escalation.
Yeah, definitely. Something else that really bothered me is the sentence. We know, criminologists have kind of explained that indecent exposure, flashing, is a crime that can escalate to more significant crimes, more serious crimes. The most famous example of that I'm aware of is Wayne Couzens, the police officer who murdered Sarah Everard after he'd been reported to the police for 2 incidents of indecent exposure. Gould's crimes are already escalating. As I've kind of made clear, I don't believe that he was following the victim because he's looking to talk to her. I think there's another motive there.
I agree with you.
Thank goodness that the girl got away from him.
Yeah. Yeah, thank God she did.
He's followed her. He followed his previous victim in the car. So why the suspended sentence, no jail time? So I looked at the sentencing guidelines, and because the offence involved masturbating at the person rather than just standing there naked or exposed, that's an aggravating factor. The age of the girl, who's 13, is an aggravating factor. So this is considered a raised harm, standard culpability offence. And the starting point for that is a high-level community order. The judge would then give a sentence kind of towards the top level of the range because it's two offences. And the sentencing range goes up to 26 weeks in prison for this category, which still seems quite low to me.
Yeah, me too.
And it's only by the grace of God that might only be by the grace of God that he didn't actually assault someone. This is dangerous behaviour that the public needs to be protected from.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I have this awful feeling that he is a white middle-aged man, and that's why he got a suspended sentence.
Yeah, it does feel like he's got away with it, really. So even with the starting point at 26 weeks, in the UK kind of guidance, there's a principle of kind of a presumption against short sentences of less than a year. So unless someone's already been given a suspended sentence and is in court again, any initial sentence that's under a year is likely to be suspended. So that's kind of explains that. But having talked about Sam Gould, that kind of brings us on to an issue that has been rumbling on for a while here, and it's sort of reached a peak recently, I think.
Yeah, it has. I'm disappointed in my country for this one.
Yeah, me too.
As we mentioned, Wes Streeting employed Sam Gould as a parliamentary aide until recently. Wes Streeting is the health minister, and he's been notoriously hostile to trans people, despite being a gay man himself. And he welcomed a recent ruling from the UK Supreme Court and guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC, that strips rights from trans people. the justification for these rulings is primarily about women's safety. Less than 2 months ago, the guy who's welcoming taking rights away from trans people was employing a flusher who targeted a child.
Yeah. The ruling itself is quite limited in what it means. It says that in the context of the Equality Act 2010, the words man and woman refer to biological males and biological females. And for those who might not be familiar with the kind of trans lingo, this is the language we'll be using. People who were born male, who are referred to as biologically male in the judgment, and have transitioned to live as women, are trans women. People who were born female and have transitioned to live as men are trans men. And conversely, cis men are men who were born male and live as men, and cis women are women who were born female and live as women. So cis just means not trans.
So the ruling is limited, but the EHRC guidance goes a lot further, and it's concerning, frankly. It says that people should use the facilities belonging to their birth sex. So trans women in men's toilets and trans men in women's toilets, which seems problematic, particularly when concerns are being raised about women's safety, because trans men often have beards and pass as male, cis male, non-trans. So therefore, any man can walk into the women's toilets and insist that there are trans men. So to supposedly deal with this, the EHRC guidance says that trans women can be excluded from men's toilets and some trans men can be excluded from women's toilets. So no toilets for these people, just nowhere to go. But the guidance also says trans people shouldn't be left without toilets. So where exactly does that leave us?
Yeah, and this is very much going to impact on cis women as well. Not just for the reason mentioned about trans men, but also because any woman who doesn't conform to gendered expectations of how they look, so maybe she's a bit tall or has facial hair because of PCOS or something similar, or butch women with shorter hair, can and will be challenged about their biological sex when they're trying to use the toilet or a changing room. And what exactly do you expect them to do to prove their biological sex?
Well, quite. So to kind of counter this, the group Translucent have produced a carry card for trans people. Essentially, it's for if you get challenged about the facilities that you're using, you present the card, which explains that the ruling is incompatible with the European Convention on Human Rights and will be challenged legally. You can access it at www.translucent.org.uk. But who are the people defending this? We've mentioned Wes Streeting, but who else?
Well, the leader of the House of Commons, Labour MP Lucy Powell, welcomed the ruling. Last week, she was asked about grooming gangs, which have been a scandal in the UK for a number of years, and a lot of people have been convicted of child abuse through their involvement in them. And because a number of the men involved in those gangs were Pakistani, some local authorities were very slow to act for fear of being accused of racism, which is a huge mistake and really badly handled. And when Lucy Powell was asked about these grooming gangs, she responded, quote, "Oh, we want to blow that little trumpet now, do we? Let's get that dog whistle out, shall we?" And just completely dismissed concerns about grooming gangs. And who defended her? Wes Streeting.
Labour activist Bex Bailey was raped at a Labour event in 2011 and advised by a senior member of staff not to pursue it, and that reporting it formally could, quote, damage her. Russell Brand is currently charged with raping women at a Labour Party conference too.
And this current government has refused to hold an inquiry into grooming gangs and has cancelled a scheme that gives compensation to victims of childhood sexual abuse. And it's not just them. A Reform MP, James McMurdoch, was jailed a few years ago for assaulting his girlfriend. And one of their council candidates, who was in the election on May the 1st, called Jimmy Savile, one of the UK's most notorious paedophiles, a, quote, working class hero, end quote. Former Tory Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that money spent on an inquiry into child abuse was being, quote, spaffed up a wall, which means money wasted. And I absolutely refuse to be lectured about women's safety by these people. I won't have it. I won't have it from people like Wes Streeting. I will disagree with people on this, but if you fight for women, then that's something. I'll discuss it with you. I won't have it from these people who pretend to care about women when they can attack trans people like me for it, but don't care about women the rest of the time. Don't do anything for women.
I am of the same mind. I absolutely refuse, point blank, period, to be lectured by anybody who has such a poor moral compass.
Yeah.
I won't do it. They're not for women. They don't really care about women. They're just trying to make life even more difficult for an already marginalised group of people, and I think it's disgusting.
So all this is to say, as well as boosting the translucent carry card and criticising some people for their hypocrisy, bluntly, this is who we are. We're always going to stand up for victims of crime, particularly marginalised victims of crime. Like today, in Missing and Marginalised, we covered the stories of two trans people, Jax Gratton and Brett Charles Williams. And we are going to keep doing that. We're feminists, we're uncompromised and unapologetic advocates for victims of crime, and that won't change.
No, and that's a promise.
Guarantee.
That won't change. We're both devastated to see the news when it came out. And for different reasons, of course, although I'm an ally of the trans community, it does affect cis women because the argument is being made on our behalf by people that don't give a shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
They haven't asked what we think.
Yeah. So, guys,
right,
that we need to say that this has been a big issue here, and we need to make it clear where we stand. Now we'll get on to our last update of the day, and Ellie's going to give us an update on the mass shooting in Uppsala.
I am indeed coming straight from Sofia, our wonderful Swedish correspondent. It turns out that one of the dead was a 15-year-old boy who was just out getting his hair cut ready for the evening celebrations. He had just begun his first job the day before that he was killed, and he was so proud and excited to be earning his own money. His father told a Swedish newspaper that the day of his death, he kissed his mother on the forehead, told her he loved her before going off to school, and then off to have his hair cut for Valborg.
Valborg is the celebration, isn't it? The big celebration they have in Uppsala. Well, across Sweden, but a big one in Uppsala.
His father went on to say that his son always cared about others, often asking if friends could stay for dinner or longer in the evening because their parents were at work or didn't have much money. The 16-year-old who was originally arrested and held in custody has been released, free of suspicion. Police now believe that he may have been the original target of a hit and therefore a surviving victim. That said, there's 3 dead and 1 surviving victim were all friends. So exactly who the target is isn't 100% clear yet. It may have been all of them, could have just been one of them.
Right, and I can't imagine the trauma of going through that at all and then being arrested afterwards. That's not a criticism of the fact he was arrested. You've got to make sure, but...
Yeah, it must have been terrifying.
It must have been, yeah. I hope he's getting some support.
But in positive news, police have arrested 4 others. One 20-year-old who's suspected to be the gunman, and 3 others who conspired to commit murder, who are all between the ages of 25 and 36 years old. So these adults shooting at kids like they're big men.
That's awful. Yeah. Hopefully we'll see charges for them if they're involved, if they're guilty, and hopefully that'll be done. Those poor kids.
Fingers crossed. So hopefully we'll get more updates on that as things happen. Thanks, Sophia. You have been an absolute gem sending me all of this information. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sophia.
And that is all for today, guys. We are we've had a packed episode, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. You can find us on social media at Version of Events. Anywhere you look, including TikTok, we have 1 video up now. You can email us at versionofevents@gmail.com, or go to our website, versionofevents.co.uk, to request cases or just to get in touch if you have something you want to say.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. Any case recommendations, either for a full episode, for a news roundup, or a missing person, maybe someone you know even who's not getting much attention, we'll try and focus on that. So yeah, please get in touch, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts.
And if there's a little bell to press to make sure that you get our episodes as soon as they drop, don't forget to give that little bell a tinkle. Get your episodes as soon as they come out.
All right, thanks for being with us, guys, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bye.